Someone in Lagos has stopped burning firewood. They've switched to an effective cook stove. This saves time, their health, and obviously the air is cleaner. But what most people don't understand, this switch has actually created some financial flows, aka money. Well, not directly money, but somewhere in the equation, the firewood she didn't burn, the smoke that didn't happen, and has created a carbon credit, and someone in Europe will pay for it. But what does that money flow look like? What happens in the gap between intermediaries? Dr. Geoffrey understands the sequence. His work at UNDP covers climate finance. In this episode, we're discussing all things climate finance, clean cooking, carbon credits, and energy transition in very simple terms. I am Emeka Okpara, and let's connect the dots. Good day, and welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm joined by Jeff Omede, who is at UNDP and who is newish to Nigeria. How many months now, or how many years now?
I've done 2 years actually.
3 years?
2 years.
2 years. Fantastic. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, when I think through your role at the UN or the at UNDP specifically around the climate conversation, a few things come to mind. One of them I keep hearing is climate change, energy transition, but the one that keeps reiterating is clean cooking.
Mhm.
What is clean cooking? And can you just explain what it means to the average Nigerian?
Thank you very much for having me, and it's always a pleasure, engaging with the next year and you, Emeka, especially. Yeah. But I think the issue of clean cooking contextualizes a lot
Mm,
of the work that the United Nations is doing, try and reach the unserved, underreached, to try and ensure that we can be able to resolve some of these major challenges that people do not even think are major challenges. Let me give a bit of a context. A woman or a man that cooks in the Western world has over 10 cooking solutions at their disposal.
over 10.
Over 10. I
Okay.
think they can even get to 20, and I'll just count a few. They can bake, they have an oven, they can bake, they have a grill, which they can use to prepare their grill. They have an egg boiler,
Mhm.
which they can easily use. They have a coffee machine that they use to prepare coffee. They now have an air fryer, which they can actually use to cook so many things. And the solutions are just there, amazing, numerous solutions that the women there, and the men who cook there as well have. That frees up their time. Young children don't have to waste time going all the way into the forest to try and find firewood. And it basically just demonstrates what sustainable cooking solutions do to people's lives. Now, let's come down to Africa and many countries in the global south. They only have three stones and they have to go find firewood. Sometimes they have to find waste materials from agricultural produce to use to cook. Um, and it's harmful, it's polluting, and it's also leading to increased respiratory ailments and diseases. And that's often the underreported reality of the of the cooking challenge in Africa. And the numbers are there. Close to 2.3 billion people globally do not have access to clean cooking solutions.
2.3 billion.
Yes. In Africa, I think we should be around 700 million or thereabouts.
That's half the continent.
Yes. Nigeria alone has close to 180 million people who do not have access to clean cooking.
Sorry, 118 million.
Exactly.
In a country of 240 million.
Yeah.
So 75% of Nigerians don't have access to clean cooking solutions.
Exactly. The underreported statistic is between 77,000 to 93,000 fatalities. That is underreported.
That's an annual number.
Annual number.
Based on just clean cooking issues.
Exactly.
From actual burns to
carbon monoxide, poisoning, a lot of the ailments that happen in the pumped up kitchens, and they exacerbate a lot of the other health issues. Yeah. The bigger challenge is also that even the firewood is now no longer available. Yeah. It used to be easily accessible, particularly in the north, right? Now they're having to walk longer distances to find.
Which increases the security risk for young girls.
Deforestation as well.
Kidnapping and all that good stuff.
And if I'm just to contextualize and tell you that becomes a developmental issue because it's driving land degradation, it's driving deforestation, it's making it impossible for us to have rain, for example. The gradual encroachment of the Sahelian desert downwards is happening. Even within the southern regions, a lot of deforestation is happening, and we might not notice it right now. But the reality is that if we do not come up with a sustainable cooking solution, then we might not have Nigeria as green as it is right now in the next 30 or maybe 40 or so years. So that's why we want to bring it to the fore. And we are really glad that we are seeing global push towards focusing on clean cooking as a developmental issue. Most of the financing that's going in the energy sector is going to the grid. You know that. I think if I can just from the top of my head, most of the money that even currently is coming into Nigeria's energy sector, very little is going into clean cooking. Because we are trying to resolve the grid, resolve generation, distribution. Hopefully, we will be able to now have a lot of electricity that can be able to unlock modern clean cooking solutions like electric cooking solutions. But we also need to ensure that we deal with the communities that are currently totally unserved and underserved, which also have a right to also have an air fryer and use 2-3 minutes to prepare their food. Of course, respecting the fact that there are unique culinary interests that every tradition and community has. But the future is for us to ensure that we avail these solutions to our communities. I don't know whether that has contextualized.
No, it has. It has. And a question that just popped in my head was around, is there correlation between if a country has adopted clean cooking, life expectancy also goes up? Is there those type of data out there?
The data is there. The WHO has been able to contextualize the importance of the health benefits of clean cooking solutions. They are there. But most importantly, the energy conversation. Countries that have clean energy solutions and they have energy security, of course, have better performance indicators on the macro and microeconomic indicators. Of course, the economic performance is better. They can be able to boost trade. They can be able to have manufacturing. They can be able to reduce the costs of setting up industries. The biggest impediment to industrialization in Africa is lack of energy.
Of course.
So and with if you have a lot of energy and you can be able to effectively have cheaper costs at that energy, then all of us will be very glad to switch to electric cooking. Currently, I don't think Nigeria is ready yet for electric cooking solutions because not only is the supply unreliable, it's also unaffordable.
Unaffordable, precisely.
Yeah, so that's why the biggest indicator for progress in a society is you just being able to facilitate people to cook, and they should be able to cook that well, because cooking is a basic human right, just as eating and food is. And without ability to cook, you will find people even cutting their furniture to just put it in the fire to cook. So let's try and think of Africa in the next 50 years. What kind of cooking do we need our continent to actually be using?
And that's a really good way to contextualize it, because like Nigeria is supposed to be the third most populous country in the world in 25 years. And if 75% of the population, when counting, don't have access to clean cooking, that means the trees in Nigeria will drastically start to reduce, and the Sahel will move closer in. The climate change conversation becomes even more of a challenge. So yeah, I don't think most people understand the context of how important clean cooking is, but I'm hoping that this bit of intro has helped paint how important it is, because I think unfortunately most people who have access to what we're doing here today to listen and to watch are not in that 75%. So they think, just like most Nigerians don't understand that half of the country don't have access to power, which sounds crazy, but that's a fact. I'm sure you've seen it with the work you've done throughout the country. But I wanted to move into talking about plans. A lot of times, um, if you view Nigeria from policies and from plans, you would think, oh my goodness, they've got it all down. They know what they're doing. Everything's perfect. But we falter when it comes to implementation because we're not properly, in some respects, coordinated to move things from point A to point B. So I think when I look through the energy transition plan, the Vision 3030 plan, all these plans are fantastic, but we haven't gotten to where we're hoping to go. And one of the conversations around the NDC, that target of bringing in more money for climate finance. But as of a couple of years ago, we were spending over $10 billion dollars on false subsidy, but on the climate side, only about $2.5 billion came into the country. How do we change that? And what's the process to really scale that over time? Because clearly we have some climate issues we need to deal with.
Yes. And I think as I reflect on your question, I really want to congratulate Nigeria. You've finally managed to put in place the frameworks that can be able to facilitate flow of climate finance. Because people do not realize, they think that climate finance just exists somewhere, you go and pick it. No, there is a lot of work that needs to be done for you to effectively be able to unlock that climate finance. Let me just use an example of the recent letter of authorization that the NCCC has issued under Article 6.2 for 5.2 million carbon credits that are going to be traded under the compliance market regime to ban. Ban is in the clean cooking conversation. We started in the clean cooking conversation. What does that mean to the common Nigerian? It unlocks between 78 to 182 million US dollars for clean cooking.
Oh, wow.
Because clean cooking has been confirmed to be a high integrity carbon reduction strategy, because you basically are switching people from firewood to a cooked stove that can be able to track how much emissions have actually been avoided by using the stove. And that is climate finance that is needed to help implement the NDC. So in terms of some of the great steps that Nigeria has done in the last maybe 3 years or thereabouts, of course, is finalizing the carbon market activation policy, having a very ambitious NDC 3.0. UNDP, we supported both processes. If I'm just to look at the NDC 3.0 and some of the innovations that have been put in there, include identifying some of the potential pipelines that can be able to unlock the climate finance. For example, clean cooking is one of the priority areas that have been identified as a measure in the NDC 3.0, unlock climate finance. And that's why you can see already the LOA has been issued to ban for clean cooking. But there's more.
Where's the two questions? Where's the money coming from when we now say climate finance? Is this public sector or is it private? And you mentioned an acronym, LOA.
Yes.
Could you explain that and then?
Yes. Wow. We need to have another session fully on carbon market. But In terms of the climate finance architecture, globally we have public sources. These are public, international public grants that are coming from governments all over and also local, and we have private as well.
Okay.
So far we have seen the largest amount of resources going to support climate activities have been public, but from the DFIs, and those are basically loans and something like that. I think over 70% Nigeria, basically DFI, World Bank, AFDB, and those kind of elements, but that's not really concessional capital. What we're trying to see is how we can unlock 30% from the local private sector and even international private sector. Since we've de-risked the transactions, we need to see a lot more of these private sector players going into the sector. Now, for climate finance, the biggest mechanism for supporting climate action has been the global UCF, for example. And the huge commitment that has existed for unlocking 100 billion US dollars for climate action across the world, which has taken so long to be met from the global stage. The COP29 finally, after a lot of negotiations and haggling, increased it to 300 billion. That's going to be availed by the global community for climate action. The reason why it is being negotiated in that framework is because the world has come to the conclusion that, climate change is being caused by all of us. But all of us are not doing it equally. There are those who are doing a lot more to cause this climate change than us. For example, if I'm to really simplify it, a forest has an elephant, an antelope, all the way to a bee. They all live in the same forest. Of course, if the elephant, the bee, the antelope, and all the animals sit around a table and try to come up with a recourse measure on how to restore the forest, you don't expect the elephant to make the bee pay the same amount of money that the elephant has done to restore the forest, right? So those big consumers, those big polluters, under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, have a higher responsibility to put a lot more resources on the table to restore the forest.
But there's this conversation that Africa only contributes 1%.
Actually, 3%.
3%.
Yes.
And you want us to change when the big players are doing so much. And I understand it's around learned behavior because people feel that if Africa doesn't change its behavior, down the road, you'll get bigger and you'll pollute more. And now your numbers will start to increase quickly. While I like that argument, you can't tell us not to use coal to power when the rest of the world industrialized with coal.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
Yes, and exactly using the same example, when the bee, the elephant, the zebra sit around a table, they all first acknowledge that we have all messed up the forest. It was not how it used to be previously. But since the bee actually have not done so much harm to the forest, I'm actually the one who's pollinating the forest, making it reproduce. If we are to split the quota of polluting and share it equally across all of us, I have a lot of unused quota of pollution to do. And so that's why I want to sell my unused pollution quota for the elephant to give me the resources that I need to adapt to climate change.
Training.
It's actually carbon markets in very simplified language. Fantastic. So then the elephant says, oh, yeah, you are right. I have finished all my quotas, in fact, for the next 1,000 years. But now I really want us to converse because by all this, I'm bigger, my economy is stronger, I'm performing better. And that is where it introduces that principle of we have to negotiate and you have to create in place a very clear mechanism where we can be able to allow the trade of carbon. So for example, the 5.2 million deal is a bilateral cooperation agreement whereby a high polluting country will pay for the emissions that are being reduced by a country like Nigeria.
Walk me through that. So Canada.
Yes.
So Canada says we pollute as one
Actually, use Singapore, Switzerland, Japan. Those are the countries that are currently
right.
looking to buy from countries that are trying to do emissions.
So they're
reduction.
emitting in their country,
Yes,
but they're reducing it to.
exactly.
But then they're saying, I'm going to pay Nigeria
Mhm.
to offset what? What does that mechanism look like?
That is actually the point. Because I've already finished my quota, and that I have resources, can be able to do emission reductions elsewhere, because the whole atmosphere is connected. It's a contiguous
Of
system.
course. It's a chain, yeah.
There's actually no jurisdiction or boundary up there.
There's no wall.
In any case, the circulations up there imply that pollution here easily finds its way all the way to Japan and thereabout. So because we own this problem together, and we own the carbon that's being emitted, and we're trying to reduce it together under the Paris Agreement. We've committed to do it through the NDCs, where we are to be ratcheting up, increasing the ambition of our reductions, so that ultimately we reduce and meet the 1.2 degree target that we want to do. Otherwise, if we do not reduce these emissions, increased release of these emissions in the atmosphere will make this world uninhabitable, and it will affect all of us.
So, for instance, the guy in Singapore, the government of Singapore says we're going to reduce emissions on our side, but to make the process better for Nigeria, we're going to invest $1 million, random number, to Nigeria to reduce, to improve clean cooking.
Yes.
Is that a pretty logical approach on what carbon trading would look like?
Yes, partly that's it. But there are two elements as well. The B, and that is Nigeria or Kenya, also has its own commitments. What we will do without international support also demonstrate that we are also working hard to improve the forest. And that's where you will find the principle of corresponding adjustment. So Nigeria will say, okay, I wanted to reduce my emissions by 30%, but because I'm receiving some support, then I have to adjust and increase the work I needed to do, so that I do not do double counting. Because part of it has been sold off.
Okay.
And so I have to continue also doing all the best that I'm trying to do, as guided by the NDC, to also ensure that we make the world a better place. That is what was fundamentally different from the Kyoto Protocol. Because the Kyoto Protocol had simply targets that you meet. If you don't meet, then you're foul of the international law, and you can actually be taken to court or whatever like that. But Paris Agreement has a self-improving mechanism where all of us, and if there's goodwill in all these players, when they come to the COPs, if there's goodwill in how they're actually reporting, documenting the work they are doing, we will actually see reduction in the emissions. Like during the COVID era, for the first time, we saw people fall in the emissions, which means that it's possible.
It's possible, yeah, precisely.
But we need all members coming to the table in goodwill and saying that, look, the forest is not the best. And if we are not careful, our children will not find this forest the way we found it. So let's try and come together in a system. And that's why I support the Conference of Parties, the COPs. People say they are big jamborees, a lot of people just traveling in. But let me ask you a question. If you remove the COP, what other mechanism will exist for all these animals in the forest to meet and agree?
So, COP is viewed as a massive jamboree. It's a nice party. I think an unnamed country a few years ago had more delegates there than the bigger countries in the world, and that country will remain unnamed. Plus people thought it was just a chance to go to Dubai to enjoy themselves, and it got the bad reputation. But I think the problem that most people see with COP is that it's viewed as a jamboree, but because people go there unprepared, they're just going there to enjoy themselves. So it's almost a point on it. So it gives the whole conversation a bad rap, right? Because first you're talking about climate, and that's so abstract,
Mhm.
and now your people are not prepared.
Mhm.
So the Western nations go in, they're prepared, they force down what they want, and they leave. Brings me to the point of the adaptation mitigation, right? Most monies in this world goes towards mitigation, right? More solar panels, X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
But there's erosion issues, there's climate change issues that are currently happening.
Mhm.
Why haven't we really, as the nations, more affected by climate change? Why haven't we pushed to adapt monies to go towards adaptation rather than mitigation?
Yeah. Yes, the COP might look like a jamboree. I've attended a couple of COPs, by the way.
I have as well.
But there's serious business that also happens by the negotiators because there are various layers of accreditation. There are the accredited people are accredited as observers, but we have state party negotiators representing countries that have been given clear mandates by the countries on what to go and advance and push. So what happens is, of course, it becomes a rigmarole in terms of decision making. Parties raise objections to the texts that are being negotiated. And then there are also massive influence peddling and lobbyists all over. And I remember there's a time one of our best ministers of environment came up with a policy that all Kenyan delegations must stay in the same hotel. And they must be meeting every evening to discuss. You get an update on what's happening across all the negotiating text, where we are, and what is our position as a country in advancing in this particular text. And for once, we started seeing a bit of order in that
Interesting.
process because previously, and I know many of people would go there, and that's the first time you've gone to this capital. You get lost, take 3 hours just finding the venue because you live so far away from where the negotiations are happening. Because you want to also save on this per diem you've been given. So you live so far away. When it starts getting dark, you're like, how will I ever get where I sleep? So, people are negotiating, but you are thinking of how you'll even get because you've not traveled. This is the first time you're going to a Western capital. You spend 30 minutes on the way going to where you sleep. Along the way, you buy a few things on the road. You do not know that the decisions are actually being made at 3 a.m. in the morning.
While you're
And in one of the meetings, I looked around, I was an observer, and I couldn't see any of Africans around, but the decisions are actually been determined.
Mm,
So some of these countries that have a lot of delegations are actually doing it in a strategic manner so that they can be there throughout and they can ensure that the decisions that ultimately come out of these negotiations respect their national sovereign interests as a country. So that's one element on how to really improve the decision making and ensure that the participants from African countries sit in throughout. And I'm glad we now have the Agnes African group of negotiators entity that's now building capacity of the negotiators. And we've seen improved participation of Africa across these negotiations. And that's why we are seeing some of these decisions becoming a bit
now,
positive.
does Africa know what it wants?
That's now the biggest challenge is we have African Union, we have various blocks, some members are in this G77, G20, but through the African group of negotiators, we are seeing a bit of conversations around the things we're going to support.
Interesting.
Of course, there are also internal elements that need to be looked at, what West Africa is interested in, what East Africa, South Africa, those are the main blocks that sometimes we would like to see, including also North Africa having a voice before this kind of conversation. So I think process is ongoing. It's to see how to make the decision making a bit more fluent and to reduce the time wasted. Sometimes one article which can be able to introduce serious legal requirements on a state can take close to 3 or 4, 5 hours being negotiated.
My goodness.
And there's no process for consensus building because if a country says I do not want that article there, another one says I want that article there, you can so long. And that's one of the reasons why we are seeing very few decisions being made at the COPs, but it's still a good process. and it needs to be improved going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Come to the mitigation adaptation financing challenge. And there's been a huge asymmetry between funds flowing to mitigation to adaptation. I actually raised it to the GCF when they were in Nigeria last year, and they told me that no, now we've tried to do so much. Now there's parity between mitigation and adaptation, and I don't agree.
No, of course not.
Yeah, the reason is adaptation is seen to be a token of
Yeah, it
appreciation.
seems to be it seems
Because
it's
you're
easy.
suffering,
Yeah.
you are sick, you have had a flood, so I need to bring in a bit of
Mm-mm.
pens
So
and
it's almost like
medicines.
aid work as opposed to development work.
Yes.
Aid is kind of like I'll give you food to eat,
Yeah.
but if it's development, I will create that environment for you to prosper. That's
Yes.
yeah.
Which is wrong, because the way I use the example of the bee and the elephant and all these elements, if the bee cannot find any flowers anymore to pollinate, it has no food. It's really not aid. It's a basic principle of common but differentiated responsibility for you to avail adaptation financing for them, because they have had to change their lifestyles. We have had situations in Africa where we've had three successive droughts meeting each other. We had it in Kenya once. Our wildlife were dropping down dead because we're not even thinking about adaptation in entirety for humans. What about the wildlife that don't have a mechanism to be supported? They need water, they need food. So this huge ecosystem failures that are actually attributable to climate change require to be financed. And that's why we are glad that in COP29, again, the Loss and Damage Fund was finally,
after how many years?
Finally, after so many negotiations, put in place. But are we seeing resources going to the Loss and Damage Fund? Not yet.
So that's the question. COP is this nice conversation with 100 and how many different nations?
170, 190,
117
yeah.
And there's this all these agreements get made. Who actually mandates legally that she get done? Because like you just said, the loss and damage fund operationalized in COP29. A year later, the flus haven't come out.
And that's why this system can only work if there's a total goodwill. And all of us as humans come to the table, understanding the perils that our development trajectories are introducing to the world, to society, and not just currently. Think about the inter and intragenerational issues around this. We are on the verge of losing the there's a rhino. There are many animals that we are making extinct in our generation.
Making extinct?
Yes, through our development work, and through our growth. I mean, we are cutting down forests, we are building huge infrastructure, but we're making it impossible for those habitats to continue existing to support those kind of wildlife and ecosystems. So when the children of your children will be born and they are told, we used to have an elephant, it's no longer there. I mean, so there's an inter and intergenerational conversation here. And that's why there's need for seriousness and commitment by particularly countries that actually are the leading polluters to avail these resources for climate adaptation. Because adaptation goes beyond just responding to a flood or a drought. It's also about building a system that can be resilient to the vulnerabilities that climate change has actually introduced communities. And that is the most important thing that we in the United Nations are continuing to advance and advocate and encourage that, adaptation needs to be looked at seriously. It's not only mitigation, because mitigation is about money. It's about proof of concepts. Sometimes there's no proof of concepts in poverty, in floods. But let me give an example of one of the tools that we have managed to do in Nigeria, in Lagos, that is demonstrating that you can also have an innovative financing investment system that can be able to unlock capital. So working with the Lagos state government, we've introduced the parametric insurance facility against flood risks.
Okay.
just recently. Insurance is now coming in as one of the avenues that could be able to unlock capital needed whenever there's a huge flood incident, and there are a lot of flood incidents that happen in Lagos. Insurance can be able to cover that through this parametric insurance facility. So there are a lot of also opportunities.
How does the average Nigerian qualify? Do they buy the insurance through
There's a
a
premium.
third party or
Yes.
through the state?
So there's a clear agreement with insurance companies that have been able to sign up to this scheme, and there's a premium that, of course, is going to be paid. Of course, the state is also providing a bit of support to that as well, because there's a huge recognition that flooding is a menace, and is a huge menace, particularly in a state like Lagos. If you extend that to communities that live along River Benue as well, you can be able to come up with a good insurance scheme that can be able to help the farmers on these important ecosystems that go through flooding every year. And there are also tools around droughts as well. So there are avenues also where you can monetize and professionalize adaptation and leverage some of the innovative financing instruments, including insurance, to actually support, boost resilience, and make people be able to recover quickly in case they are actually having a climate related risk. So there are all these elements that actually exist out there. And that should also prove to you that it's not only mitigation that needs to be financed. There's a way we can also professionally bring adaptation onto the table and support ecosystems. But even as we do that, one of the most important elements is recognizing the fundamental ecosystem failures that have been attributed to climate change, and those need to be financed through the loss and damage facility. So right now, I think countries are trying to look at some of the evidences of loss and damage incidences. Then they can put them forward, and probably there will be a financing mechanism to actually deal with those kind of loss and damage incidences. Yeah.
So who's the international police that actually forces countries to do what they're supposed to do, or is there one?
This is where the transparency and reporting requirements are absolutely essential for the COPs and for the Paris Agreement. The system where you come and say, this is what Nigeria has done, this is what Kenya has done, this is what we have managed to do against the commitments we made to do last year. Now, interestingly, you should take a time and read the advisor opinion that came from the ICJ recently on climate as a potential international crime. And it's raising a lot of heat right now. But the opinion by the ICJ, which was released last year, is pushing this climate change, and particularly if you're doing it obstinately and without care for the other countries, to be a potential legal criminal issue. And that would drastically change how countries look at climate change, because then it actually starts getting serious legal repercussion instances for you. You can't just continue polluting like that, and you're leading to other countries having problems, droughts, killing people, and there's no legal recourse for you. So that legal opinion should be interesting. I mean, for maybe we could in future discuss a bit more on the legal elements around it, because then you come to the point of enforcement, compliance. For now, we are really trying to still work on the economic incentives elements, just making people realize that there's good business in taking sound environmental and climate sound policies and decisions. And we're doing it, like the community in the forest. They're just trying to ensure that things work well before we try and find the elephant and take them to court and even levy some penalties to them, pay for what you've done. I mean, because that system is still growing right now, but it might grow in the next maybe 10 or so years. There will be perhaps a precedent that will make it normative for a country to sue another country for climate-related risk. But that's an area that's still developing.
Yeah, and that quite hasn't happened because there's a viewpoint that the top 5 polluters support a number of the countries who are on the downside, right? Because they give them aid, they give them support through all sorts of mechanisms. So countries that's receiving aid from bee, that's receiving aid from an elephant, will not come and sue the elephants, because then the money that they're providing to support maybe some health crisis now goes away. So I think there's a bit of a balance. That's why we really need to create that international police that's able to really hold countries accountable. Um, Maybe just moving on to the conversation of Africa and climate. I know a few years ago in your country, we had the first Africa Climate Summit, and that achieved quite a bit as far as setting the tone on what it means for Africa and how and the conversation goes. What's the UN's role in that? You guys involved in trying to strengthen that to ensure that we're speaking with one voice in the continent?
Yes, largely we are seeing a lot of coherence emerging across the continent. There's a lot of awareness, at least by all most of the countries in Africa, on where they stand when it comes to climate issues. We're also now starting to see massive energy projects starting to be formulated, right? In fact, I'm doing another paper right now that's just analyzing potential game-changing energy projects that cut across one country, like what South Africa is doing, what the Inga Dam in Congo is going to mean.
When is that thing
for the
going to be
region.
built? Talk about
Finally, it's
Inga
being
Dam for
finalized.
how many decades now?
So finally, they have put in place a very interesting financing structure that includes countries like South Africa and others providing resources to buy the energy that come out of it. And that has somehow made that deal plausible, because the energy that will come from Inga Dam will be massive.
The numbers are, I want to say it's 10,000 megawatts.
Yes, should be 11 gig, around 11 gig. Look at what Ethiopia has done with the Grand Renaissance Dam. And so we're starting to see projects that are conceptualized not just for their country, but to really open up that market.
Yeah, precisely.
And those are some of the things that are happening. Of course, on the policy front, there's need for a lot more coherence and political leadership among the heads of state. We are seeing private sector starting to talk to each other. But the barriers are there. I mean, the barriers are immense, be it taxation, flow of goods and services, even flow of labor.
Yeah, travel.
Even travel itself, it's completely impossible to travel across
flying from Abuja to Cameroon, the capital city, you make three stops. And Cameroon is literally the next country over. You go to Togo, you go to Equatorial Guinea, then you end up in Cameroon.
I was going to Algeria. I went through Dubai, Charles de Gaulle in France, and then to Algeria. I mean, you do not even want to contextualize how much time I wasted making that call.
Carbon.
And the carbon emission that actually were released here. So, well, there's progress, but it's a little bit too gradual. Sometimes I feel we make 3 steps ahead, then we make 2 behind. But generally, the conversations are happening. We are seeing a lot of leadership on the continent towards this kind of work. But my main point on this is, if the continent can be able to sort out its energy issues, I think the continent, Africa, can be able to meet a lot of its development needs and trajectories, because we are blessed with a lot of resources. One of the most fascinating elements of our geography, for instance, is the kind of rivers we have. The fast flowing, we have a lot of waterfalls. It makes it impossible to navigate. And that's why we've not been able to have a lot of water transport, unlike Europe and the other guys that have rivers that are actually navigable. But that also has huge potential for us. Hydro. I don't know why we've not been able to fully tap into hydro. Hydro is the baseload energy for Africa.
And it's cheap.
It's cheap, of course. The biggest challenge is it takes so long to construct. There's a lot of procurement-related challenges around it. But if we sort out the procurement-related challenges around constructing these projects and make them a bit more faster, 2 years construction, that's baseload. And some of these rivers are actually permanently flow the whole year round. Of course, the levels go down during the dry seasons, but largely you can be able to maintain that as your baseload. So the other renewables can come in and just ensure that there's a healthy mix. And then work on the interconnectivity, the transmission. Why doesn't Africa have an asynchronous grid like Europe does have, that's servicing over 22
As
countries?
regional grids, but it's not hooked together. And even the Nigerian grid
Is not even
is
fully
not part of the West
the Western
African
African power pool.
power
Right.
pool.
But for once, we are glad that I think there was an attempt to have to 8 or 10 hours,
And it worked.
and that it worked.
It worked
Perfectly well.
Yeah.
So I think we're starting to see some of these elements happen, but we need a lot more force and dedication to ensure that we can look at Africa as one market and create the necessary infrastructure that can be able to allow some of these energy to be sold, deal with tariff issues, deal with taxation issues, and just unlock the continent to become one of the major elements. And these are some of the elements I would think the African Climate Summit and this other African should be able to achieve to really push our continent to the next
level. Just, I know this is controversial, but given what's happening in the Middle East, I think Africa can gain so much more if it utilizes solar, wind, and hydro at the maximum level, and then sell all your gas. Because gas, Norway has gas,
yes,
but they sell most of it, and all of their generation is renewable energy. We can do the same thing because sun is not a challenge here. We just need to pair it with a base load like hydropower and also wind to give it some coverage as well. Um, One of my earlier guests who runs Mainstream Energy talked through how, yes, hydro is something that they obviously do, about 2,500 megawatts, but they're now looking to do floating solar on the river as a way to use the space, but also as a way to now put solar on the grid. So you have these conversations that are going on. But for me, I think we need to hasten it because the more and more time that's wasted, the more and more Africans, half of the continent, don't have access to power. So we need to really get these conversations started.
Yeah, and the Strait of Hormuz. You know what it has actually done? Just I think this week. Is it this week or last week? The Dangote refinery, for the first time, has been able to get deals in 5 countries. They're going to be selling the products in I think Ghana, Tanzania, Togo, Ivory Coast. There are 5 countries. 460,000 tons of produce are going to be going to those 5 countries.
And the
for the first time.
question is, does that then limit how much we have in Nigeria?
No. The issue here is, and even the Western African power pool, Nigeria makes a lot of money from selling electricity to the region, right?
Don't say that too loudly.
But it's the truth, right? There's some that goes because it also helps you unlock liquidity that you need.
And Forex.
And Forex as well. I mean, because we need to look at ourselves as an interconnected market. We need, of course, to deal with the inefficiencies, challenges, and impediments. Of course, we need to ensure we supply the locals. We also need to know that premium products will be needed across the other countries. If Tanzania receives this energy and it helps them alleviate a challenge, you've made a major contribution to them, but they've been able to pay for it.
They'll pay a premium for it.
Yeah, in the long run, that's a private venture that has been established here, of course, with huge opportunities to also strengthen Nigeria's standing as a giant energy stabilizer in the continent. Who knows how long the challenges in the Strait of Hormuz are going to last? So every resource, from how I look at it as a Pan-Africanist, I see all this as our African resources. Some of the challenges that occurred, and that made me realize that the asynchronous grid in Europe was a major savior, was during the Russia-Ukraine challenges. The countries like Moldova at some point did not have
Yes.
energy.
Mhm.
Simply because you are connected to their synchronous grid, countries managed to send them energy and alleviated massive suffering that would have happened in the winter
Mhm. Mhm.
when it was too cold. So,
Mhm.
I mean, let's look at Africa as one market. Let's look at the unique opportunities we all have. Kenya, we are strong in renewables. We are happy to bring the technologies all over. We have been able to become a major expert on geothermal energy, providing expertise all over the world because we tap
Because what
our baseload is now geothermal.
70% is geothermal?
Over 90% of our electricity is clean.
Yeah, because you have three massive wind. Yeah.
Solar, and hydro. And we are now working to retire some of the thermal generators that we brought into the country.
Oh, wow.
I think in 1999, thereabouts after the El Nino. It's technology. That's know-how. Our experts, I'm sure, will be very glad to come here and sell some of this technology. And we make Africa one huge market that has a healthy energy mix. What stops us from doing that? So that's why the investments like the Dangote refinery is a major, major investment. I celebrate it as a Kenyan. I know many people in these 5 countries that will be getting this energy will celebrate this investment. Yeah, and that's why that's how I look at it as an energy expert that has been able to analyze this for a number of years. As I look at the challenges that are coming up and the opportunities that are also coming up across the continent.
I was listening to an interview a few weeks ago, and I can't remember which expert it was, or from the West. It said Africa is the future in all aspects of it. My biggest challenge with that, Africa is the future, is it can be business as usual. We can't be that extractive region where someone comes, extracts what they need, and leaves. So but you also can't be productive until you're able to have power or energy in your country to refine. And now, just for instance, a fish, a random example, a fish that hasn't been dried is worth 1/10 of a dried. So you think to that conversation, or is it gemstones? A gemstone that hasn't been cut is 100 times more valuable once it's been cut and once it's been refined and processed. So that's why energy is so important in everything that we do. Most businesses here in Nigeria that produce, 40% of their cost is energy. So imagine this issue here with the Strait of Hormuz. You now have that energy cost now go up 50%. And now you're now looking at almost all 6% of your inputs are now energy issues. So I think this commission is very important as a pan-Africanist to be able to understand that we as a continent have to improve how have to hasten the speed to get more energy into the country to help us be more productive. So we stop being this extractive place. Someone shows up, pick what they want, and leave. So we need to change that. I wanted to just talk quickly about your work. The UNDP is really focused on a few things around clean cooking, health facilities, and solar with the 23 mini grids you're doing. But from my point of view, that's a lot of coordination you have to do through Ministry of Power, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, and a number of these agencies. How do you do it?
Wow, yeah. I think it's really interesting. We have a leadership in UNDP. Our resident representative, Madam Elsie Atefa, has really encouraged us, pushed us to really focus on the development issues in Nigeria. And that's why we've been able to place energy as one of the critical enablers and the pillars to achieving socioeconomic transformation in Nigeria. And we are glad that a lot of things are happening. The president has put in place very ambitious reforms, in the energy sector, in the finance sector. And so UNDP, we are working alongside the government in ensuring that these ambitious reforms actually bring out results. Through the integrated clean energy offer, I mean, we've worked extensively with the stakeholders, and now we have the new Electricity Act being rolled out. We have the new Nigeria Integrated Electricity Policy that we participated in formulating.
Yes, you were very involved in that process.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
There's now the SIP that's now being completed currently. We are seeing states taking this up, with a lot of gusto. Yeah? We were with you in Enugu, and we saw how Enugu, the trendsetter, the one that decided to go into uncharted waters, territory, and is starting to get some good results out of it. We are happy to see close to 15 states are now really trying to really take up these markets. And so the UNDP, we're very glad to just partner and support the Nigerian people as we try and get some of these work going on.
And you have state-specific places that you work on. So
Yes.
you know, because I think sometimes the challenge with organizations is they stay in Abuja and they don't actually get into the hinterlands. But you were traversing Abia State a few days ago, right?
Yeah.
What are the states you work?
Through the African Mini Grids program, we will be rolling out in partnership with REA, by the way. REA are our biggest partners in this sector. We'll be rolling out 23 mini grids in 23 states. We had the first one unveiled last year in Namu, in Plateau State. It's looking at the agricultural link, because through the African mini grids, we are looking at how to empower climate smart agricultural value chains. So these are only 23 sites that were identified, but I think there are more sites that energy can quickly unlock agricultural productivity. We've signed a lot of MOUs with the Bank of Agriculture, with the TED Fund, and we're just trying, they're ensuring that our development DNA is leveraged to support Nigeria's economic transformation. And this is what UNDP does, because people do not sometimes realize how we are. We are a knowledge-based organization with physical country presence in 140 countries, physical UNDP offices in 140 countries that are covering 170 countries globally. And that what that does is you have a strong network of expertise, of knowledge, even of experiences, of examples of pilots that worked or didn't work. And so I can quickly, in just going to teams, get some of these expertise if you need. And that is what's really helping UNDP be able to galvanize development across the world. And that's the kind of expertise we also are bringing down here in Nigeria as we roll out these programs in clean cooking. Let me speak about health, for instance. Last year, we partnered with the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare and the Ministry of Power to organize the first ever power and health dialogue in Nigeria. And I was amazed sitting in that room when I heard the Minister of Power say, this is something that's really, really important, because for a long time, Minister of Power has been there, Minister of Health has been there. But when you bring the two together, you realize the commitment that has now come out of that meeting of powering 30% of Nigeria's healthcare facilities is a majorly transformative commitment. Of course. Because it makes sure that people can actually have healthcare services at night. The sun that is free out there can be tapped and can be used to power essential and vital services in the hospitals. And that can be able to really boost the quality of life. Of course. And we can also build a sustainable financing model around it, because it's really not for free.
Because what they're paying for diesel is much higher than...
A lot more. We've just done a number of energy audits in a number of states, 10 hospitals. And we found that the services are totally suppressed, 30% suppressed. Some of the medical equipment are not turned on until Wednesday, between this time to this time, when the generator will be turned on for that service to be provided.
So imagine the effects on human
systems. So just that kind of convening has been able to help us put the conversation on health and power and on the front burner. UNDP, we are sitting on the steering committee. I am sitting in the technical committee, and we're looking at how to come up with a financing structure for health systems solarization. That's just one. The second one is an NREF. The first time we worked with the REA, NASENI, to organize the first conversation on Nigeria Renewable Energy Innovation Forum, made in Nigeria. How can we ensure that Nigeria does not import away not just its money, but opportunities for jobs, local industries in the
jobs, yeah.
renewable sector? And we are glad for the first time Nigeria exported its panels in Ghana. It can do more.
Of course.
Because not only do you have a market here, you have a need and you have the money to pay for it. You also have the minerals
To do it, yeah.
that are critical ingredients that are needed to support these renewables that are happening. We tie the loose ends, we bring it out as a major pipeline, and Nigeria becomes a dominant manufacturer to some of these elements. This came out from the NREF that we had with the REA and ASENI last year. So these are some of the elements that UNDP is doing to catalyze and to push the conversation and to make energy not just a talk shop, but to come up with practical elements on how we can be able to radically transform Nigeria's energy infrastructure now and in future. So these are just some of the initiatives that we are doing in Nigeria, including also working in the states, because we are having some MOUs with states.
Yes.
We have a physical presence in all the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. And we are actually here as partners to Nigeria and trying to ensure that this can be able to go to the next level.
No, it's fascinating watching what UNDP has done over the past 2 or 3 years. I've been in the sector since 2013, and you would hear about all the aid organizations, USAID, for that at the time, EU, but UNDP was never in the fold. And I think maybe you're the secret sauce, right? That's just really come out and really been very bullish, because we're seeing UNDP show up in different places that wasn't the case before. So well done on that. And I think aid has changed. It's no longer, let me write your policy and then you implement, and then I'll look at my log frame in 5 years to see if I've achieved what we're supposed to do. It's now, no, I'm trying to do projects that I can see value in, not immediately, but just in short order. I think that has really favored the approach that UNDP has taken of going down to the state level and ensuring that you're now talking to folks at the state level, but also holding NASENI, REA as part of that conversation. So really well done. And I hope you don't plan to leave Nigeria anytime soon. I hope you're here for the next 10 years or so.
I'm Nigerian now. I've actually been given a local name.
Really?
Two, actually. I will be issuing a poll to decide which one I'm going to take.
Yeah.
But I've not gotten any indigenship offer. So,
well, maybe if you tell the audience what those names are, we can help you decide.
Emeka, not you. Chukwuemeka.
That's my full name.
I don't know how it happened.
That's
but
interesting.
I'm also thinking of taking Femi.
Femi, okay.
So I mean,
interesting.
I'm having fun. I like egusi soup. I've discovered banga soup, and it's amazing, especially if it's hot. I've gotten used to pepe. Oh man, that was tough. I think now I breathed through it. When I arrived here, it was a bit of a
because your food in Kenya not too. It's kind of bland.
It's very bland, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. It's very bland compared to our food here.
No, I agree. I agree entirely. I think, to be very honest, the culinary. Wow, Nigeria's food is amazing, and you have million types of food. Everywhere you go, there's a new food. We'd lost our all traditional foods, unfortunately, in Kenya. Maybe something we should learn from Nigeria and bring it back, because we used to have a lot of traditional foods. But now we've lost them over the years. But I like how Nigeria has managed to hold firm on its food.
Very important.
Very traditional food. And it takes longer, of course. I mean, to prepare, it starts like 3 days before. And I don't like the fact that, you went into the forest, got all the animals. That's the only bit that I think We need to
and put
change.
them all in one pot. And
I mean, now I don't know whether your trap still catch some of those animals. You know, maybe that's the only bit that perhaps maybe you need to see how to domesticate some of those.
make it more
Otherwise, you will not have wildlife. I mean,
wildlife.
that's the challenge. And in Kenya, we have a lot of wildlife. It's a major part of our heritage. Of course, we have bushmeat also, but it's really, really regulated. It's not done like on a large scale as
Nairobi is one of the only capitals that has a safari in
in
the city.
The city. Yeah, we have a park right. The only
10 minutes away, right?
Yeah,
10 minutes from Westlands, where I stayed the
within.
last time. Yeah,
You basically can see Kenyatta International Conference Center while in Nairobi National Park. And we have Karura Forest also that Wangari Maathai really fought to preserve. Right in the city, you can have a walk, very interesting forest walk, right in the city. So I think Abuja also can be able to do that.
You're preserving your
wildlife.
Now, just let me get you out on this last question. We know you're Nigeria if you do the following. When you travel back to Kenya, do you carry pepper with you?
No,
you're not
I'm not yet there.
You're not Nigerian yet, but soon.
I'll be carrying it with me.
Thank you so much, sir. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and looking forward to more discussions. It is always good opportunity to try and share out some of these perspectives, because this is how we'll manage to change Africa. This is how we'll be able to leave Africa better than we actually found it.
Excellent.
And thanks so much for the great work that Nigeria is doing.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Awesome.